I'm gonna build a mini gaming PC for the first time ever. I'm gonna show you how much it costs, how hard it is, and talk about why you just might wanna build one too. We're gonna start with the most essential part of any mini PC, and that's the motherboard. And for this one, we've got the Z890i Edge Ti Wi-Fi. It is a micro ATX motherboard and is essential for a mini PC. Now, this particular motherboard does have a lot of features, starting with the point that it is Z890, which means it is the highest level of chipset that you can get with the new Intel Core processors. Now, right off the bat, this heatsink is massive, which is gonna be really important if you had a super fast M.2 that was Gen 4 or super duper fast Gen 5, because a mini PC is not gonna have the best airflow. Also with this motherboard, we have 7 regular USB-A ports. We have 3 USB-C, with one of those being a Thunderbolt 4 port. We also got Wi-Fi 7 access. This motherboard also comes with a port for an expansion card, but it's only the MSI 5-in-1 expander card, which I will not be using in this build. Or at least that's what I thought, but more on that later. Another really cool feature is you do get another M.2 port on the back of the motherboard, which would be nice if you ever wanted to expand storage, although more than likely you're going to want to put this in before you build it because it's probably not going to be easy to get to. And the CPU we're using for this mini PC is the Core Ultra 265KF. This is probably the best bang for your buck CPU right now, especially for the Core Ultra series. I mean, the big negative is you cannot really upgrade it at all, but you know, with it being a mini PC, I'm probably not going to upgrade it very often anyway. And so this was actually not a crazy choice for me. I also bought this during Intel Gamer Days, which means I got Battlefield 6 for free.
Nice.
Which means I can enjoy Battlefield 6 as well as a really good price on a CPU. Now, so far with these two parts, we've spent a good chunk of money. This motherboard alone costs $300, which is gonna be the case with any really good ITX motherboard right now because it costs a lot of money to get things crammed into this tiny of a shell. CPU though, since I bought it with Intel Gamer Days, was on sale for like $250-ish. And then if you take away the cost of Battlefield 6, I got it even cheaper than that. So we're sitting around $500, $550 for the PC so far. Now, for those of you that don't know, when it comes to Intel CPUs, these Core Ultra CPUs run better when you have really fast RAM. So this RAM that we have is the T-Force Extreme. It's DDR5, of course, but the big thing about it is it can go up to 8,000 mega transfers per second, which is going to give us some absolutely insane numbers and should really help the performance out on this Core Ultra CPU. This particular set of RAM is 32 gigs and it would set you back around $240. Next, we have the Spadium M48 Pro. This thing is super fast with 7,400 megabytes per second read speeds and 7,000 megabits per second write speeds, which is pretty crazy. And because we don't want to take this PC apart a lot, 2 terabytes should be plenty for the games that we're going to be playing on our mini PC. This is one of the cheapest parts of our build at only $120. Next, we need to talk about cooling the CPU. And for this particular build, we're going with this MSI Mag cooler. It's a 240 millimeter AIO. And the main reason that I wanted this particular AIO, I was just looking for an AIO that had a pretty good clearance here with the water block. This water block is down pretty low. And with a CPU cooler, you're limited to how many heat pipes and how high the fan can stand up off the CPU if you go with a traditional air cooler. And this particular air cooler only set us back $70. So far we're at around $1,000, I believe, and we haven't got the case, power supply, or the graphics card. Okay, so now that we've got everything prepped and ready to go inside the case, let's talk about our case. And mini ITX cases can get really expensive really fast. I guess small things are valuable now. Anyway, this case only costs $99, which is the cheapest thing in our entire setup so far, and will probably be the cheapest thing, period. And after doing a lot of research, this is the case that I ultimately decided on for multiple reasons. Number one is it's all mesh and has a white front panel, which matches the entertainment center for my living room, which was the most important thing because my wife had to approve it. But outside of that, the all mesh is going to provide for a lot of airflow considering it will be in the entertainment center. The other thing I really like is it does support a 240 millimeter AIO, which again, that's what we went with in this build because Small form factor air coolers just kind of scare me that they're not gonna be enough to cool the CPU. Now this thing can support some crazy GPUs up to 325 millimeters long and I think 160 millimeters wide. Now we are gonna have a good bit of room in here for the size that it is, but the part that I like the most is we don't have to worry about a riser cable. Because if you don't use a Gen 5 riser cable with a Gen 5 GPU, you can run into issues and you have to go into the BIOS and all that stuff. And we don't want to deal with all that. So anyway, now before we start trying to build in it and talk about how easy or hard that is, we're gonna have to talk about our power supply. And this is a small form factor power supply from Seasonic. It is 80 plus platinum, which is gonna be really good because we just barely have enough wattage for the graphics card that we're gonna be using that I'll tell you in a little while. So we wanna make sure this is really good. The other part about small form factor power supplies is they are really expensive. This is a platinum small form factor from one of the best and most reputable power supply brands, Seasonic. And so it's pretty pricey. The only place I could find it on Amazon right now is like $370. Seasonic was nice enough to send this out to us, so I didn't personally pay for it myself, but there might be other places you can find it cheaper, but you probably are gonna pay $200 to $350 for a really good small form factor power supply. That's just how it is. Again, small things are valuable. So let's get all this put together and see how good it is. Now building in this case should be similar to building in cases that I've built in before, but it's just gonna be a lot less room to deal with. And first, we have to take off these little metal pieces. Now I'm gonna try to do this without looking at the manual if I can help it, just because, you know, I'm stubborn like that. But we're gonna unbox our power supply first. And again, SPX 750 watt platinum from Seasonic. It's the Seasonic Focus. And it is fully modular, which is also a super nice touch. And then we've also got this super itty bitty tiny power supply, which is awesome. It's gonna give us more room to build inside the case. The only downside to this case is there is no like 50 series connector. So we are gonna have to use like 3 separate ports. I've already had to break out the instructions. So apparently I also have to take out this metal piece as well in order to install the power supply. All right, so that should do there. But before I put that back in, let's install the motherboard. All right, so you have to be very strategic with how you plug up the wires with this. So I'm thinking that I can't like wrap this underneath and plug it in because it's gonna get in the way of the GPU. So we're gonna have to plug it up now because there's like no way for me to like run it around the edges and keep it out of the way. So I'm gonna have to go ahead and plug up that as well as the fans because it's gonna kind of be sitting like in front of it like this. So I'm a little concerned that it's kind of like that these fans are gonna it's gonna get in the way of the fan spinning. So we may have to like add a zip tie where we zip tie it to the pump or something because there's not really another good way to do it. Same thing with the actual pump itself. And so also have RGB for the pump that I need to plug in, which I can just plug that in here. Although the RGB is not going to be a huge deal, I'm mainly just using the RGB for thumbnail purposes or picture purposes. So anyway, let's go ahead and peel that off. I also think that it's going to be in our best interest to go ahead and plug the CPU cable up before we put the motherboard inside the case. And I think that's almost everything. So I'm going to kind of slide the box out of the way. And I'm gonna kind of slide this over here because again, like our connectors are kind of like in the way. And I actually don't see a USB 3.0 connector. So I'm gonna see if there's like maybe an adapter or something that I'm missing in the box for the motherboard. Okay, so I stand corrected from earlier when I said we were not gonna be using this expansion for this motherboard because it turns out that we have to use it because it comes with this little card here that gives us access to SATA ports, USB-C connection, and another USB-C that we're gonna use to get our 3.0 header. Which, like I said, I don't spend a lot of time building small form factor PCs, so this was something that I wasn't really prepared for. That's why I was trying to like take my time. And so now we can plug up the the USB-C connector here because we have room for it. The front panel connector is gonna be just barely enough room for it right there underneath. But then we still need to plug up the USB 3.0. And they provided us with this little adapter here that has like a USB-C cover that goes right in here, and then it connects to the USB 3.0, which is extremely, extremely nice. And we can kind of get everything inside the PC now. Oh me. So in order to make this particular motherboard situation work, one pro tip here with this case is I had to unscrew the 2 screws that were connecting this, and I had to like flip it around. It was turned this way and it was bumping the motherboard. So I had to turn it this way so that this cord would be coming out here and it would fit with the motherboard. And hopefully that doesn't give me problems later on when I'm trying to install my GPU. Now, all of these cords look like a tangled mess, and there's not much that I can do for that, but I probably will try to at least like zip tie it to the edge or something so that hopefully it doesn't get caught in the fans for the AIO. But I think we're okay right now to reinstall our power supply. Actually, before I do that, I am gonna plug up the 24 pin into the motherboard as well so that we fat hens in there later. And I think actually too, we're gonna plug up all these cables into the power supply as well. Again, trying to not have to, you know, like shove our hands up in there when it comes to plugging stuff up later on. And it appears it's gonna work out for us. Now for our GPU, we're gonna have to use 3 PCIe cables because this one doesn't have the 12 volt power connector, which is kind of a bummer because that means we're gonna have to use all these extra cables inside this little bitty case. All right, so we got all that situated. We're gonna kind of pull these cords away here so that, you know, not in the way. I wonder if this will fit this way. Yeah, because that would bring some air in, but that's probably no, that'll be in the way of the AIO here in a minute, so I can't do that either. Okay, so let's flip this up and see if we can get these holes aligned. I know these. Ooh, man, it's getting hot in here. Well, I hope whatever that was that just fell off is not important. All right, and then we also have to make sure that this will also not get in the way of anything else. Why is this not working? Oh, that was super duper annoying. Okay, and then we can kind of like wrap this up and around so that it's tucked in up on top of there and hopefully will not get in the way of anything else. All right, this still very much looks like a mess at the moment. All right, so now we gotta attach this AIO here, but we also have to be able to get some air in there. And so I'm thinking that we're gonna have to like flip the fans to the other side so it'll bring in air to cool the radiator. Oh man, that's gonna be fun. All right, let's get started on that. All right, so I unscrewed these fans and flipped them around. And then what I think that I'm gonna have to do is install this on top of those as well so that we can put this in the case. So we're gonna try this with just a couple of these screws and see if it works first before we tighten the whole thing down. That was very stupid, Matthew. Okay, now with everything situated, let's see if we can get this lined up here. Oh, heck yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
All right, so it actually took me a really long time to figure out how to get all of this turned and situated so that it would actually go inside the case the way that it needed to go. And I took several minutes to do this. And you can see here that I did have to remove another bar on the case to get it situated. And I ended up having to take it back apart and flip around one of the white brackets to install. And I tried to cable manage some stuff, but it didn't actually go that well. But anyway, we also had a problem with our 4080 Super. That was the graphics card that we were going to end up trying to use, but that did not work. And so we had to come up with a backup plan.
All right, so it took way too long to get to this point right now, but we're having to switch graphics cards. We're going with the 5070 instead of the 4080 Super because it's a little bit more narrow. We're gonna have more room to work with. And because these cords are not giving us a lot of clearance, we're kind of just stuck in a rough spot. So that's kind of where we're gonna be going with this. I still don't think that we're gonna be able to fit it in there because we're still gonna just be bumping up against these cords and fighting these cords the whole time. Most likely, that's what it appears like we're going to be doing. And I'm trying not to lose any of these screws in the process, but it does appear that's the way it's gonna go. This whole thing has been increasingly difficult. As you can see, we're kind of stuck here. And this is why I told you guys, I've never built a mini PC before and it's very difficult. Researching like the parts and getting them all compatible and all those things makes for an extremely difficult build. And so right now I can't fit anything in this particular case that I have. So what I'm gonna have to do is order a GPU, probably like a 5060 Ti or something. I'm gonna try to find a 2-fan card because this one's just too long. I played with it for a really long time. I tried to cable manage the cords a few different ways and nothing would work. And so now what I'm gonna do is order a card and wait for it to come in, and then we can hopefully finish the build from there. All right, so it's been a few days and we finally found us a GPU, and it's this one, the RTX 5070. This is the MSI Ventus 2X. It was one of the only 2-fan RTX 5070s I could find, and this white version was only $20 more than a normal MSRP 5070, so to me it was totally worth it. And I'm kind of a nerd, and since MSI sent out the rest of the stuff, I couldn't get them to send me a graphics card. They said they didn't have any samples in stock that matched the build, so I just decided to buy this one myself. And with the DLSS 4, we should be able to play story mode games at 4K, no problem, on our living room setup. But I'll show you those benchmarks here in just a minute. Let's see if it's easier to install inside this PC. All right, so another really good thing about this 5070 is since we're having to use an adapter because of the Seasonic power supply, we only need 2 8-pins, so we can actually go in here and remove one of these PCIe cables to have less cables that could possibly get in the way. All right, now we're down to just 2 PCIe cables, which we can plug into our adapter. I know these adapters kind of get a bad rap because of the 50 series and all the burning issues, but for the most part, I've only seen that happen on like the 5090s, and most of the time it was an error where they didn't get this plugged all the way in, and I'm always super cautious about that. I say that now and watch my PC burn down, explode, but anyway. All right, so now we're gonna kind of push these out of the way as far as we can, leave us a really open gap there, make sure we push our tab down, and we should have a very easy GPU clearance. Yeah, it's snapped in there, super easy. And then we can go and get our GPU cable plugged in, press it in there real good, make sure we don't have any issues. And then I've got to find these 2 screws because I don't know what I did with them. Okay, so I actually think there's a strong possibility that I threw those screws away because I had to pause filming on this and film some other stuff while I was waiting on the GPU to come in. And yeah, so we're gonna hope that some of these other PC screws that I keep for everything will fit. That one does. A little bit longer probably than what it should be, but there we go. All right, so we got the GPU in there snug. Now we can just fold up these extra cables, push them down, push that inside, and let's see if we can get our side panels back on. All right, so here's the real moment of truth, is will this side panel snap on, about knock my camera over, snap on and stay on. Okay, it's not snapping in that spot. That's because we're missing those pieces. Oh man, that's not good, guys. I must have knocked those out too. Well, this would have been perfect had I not knocked that out. We'd be chilling fantastically at the moment, but we are not. But I did get all the panels on other than this one that won't press down, and we'll see if we can find that box at some point, but it's not a big deal. So let's see if this will boot up. I found my box, and so now I can put in one of these doohickeys and everything will snap in now. Woohoo! Look how clean that looks, baby. Small form factor PC, super nice. Now we just gotta see if it'll boot. Just a warning, while this thing, I'm about to press the button to see if it'll turn on. I did put this GT710 in this PC because we have a KF, which means no integrated graphics. And I went ahead and installed Windows, so everything works. We just gotta see if it's gonna work with this new graphics card and all the cables mashed in there. So let's see what we got. Uh-oh, hold on, hold that thought. I didn't plug up the PC. What an idiot. Okay, now let's try this again. All right, it's lighting up. You can see the lights on the side there. Hey, I think we got a boot. Let's go. All right, so while this thing is booting up, like I said, I've already installed Windows here. What we'll do is make sure all these games are up to date, update the drivers and all that stuff, and we'll talk about what the 4K performance is for this mini PC and if you should build one. All right, so we had our chance to play and test some games on this PC, and overall, I'm super impressed and really happy. I also want to show you you the full entire price breakdown as well. I just tested a few of the games that I'm gonna be playing in my living room setup, which is gonna be in a future video, so make sure you're subscribed to that. But on Warzone at 4K balance settings, we got like 90-ish FPS, and with upscaling, it pushed at least to that 144 mark, which is probably where most gaming TVs kind of cap out at. Fortnite had no issues whatsoever, DX12 or performance mode. We were pushing 300, 400 FPS depending on the settings. But where I really want to shine and play with this type of PC is in the story mode games. I got a lot of things in my Steam library that I just hadn't had a chance to play, and I really just want to sit back with a controller and relax and chill and play some games. And games like Borderlands 4, 4K settings, you did have to use DLSS and some frame generation, tweaking the settings around. I was able to get high settings with a little bit of tweaking and get around 80-90 FPS. Obviously, you're not getting the full 4K resolution there because of frame gen and super resolution, that sort of thing. But I did the same thing with Black Myth Wukong, and once again, got a super playable, smooth experience to the point where I would actually be very, very, very happy playing on this kind of PC with that sort of performance. So hopefully I can, get some progress on my Steam library by being able to play some games like this. So for the full price breakdown, we're looking at somewhere between $1,800 and $1,900 for this entire gaming PC. Not terrible value, not the absolute best value, but for a small form factor PC that can pack a pretty powerful punch, I think it's pretty awesome. And if you want to see the living room setup this is going to go in, you can click right here when it's available, or click here to see what $1,800 could buy you in a different PC.